Somewhere in the world right now, someone is digging a hole. Not to plant something. Not to build something. To put someone in it. You've probably been to a burial. You've stood at the edge of a grave. You've watched a coffin lower into the earth and felt something that didn't have a name. And afterward, someone probably said something like, "It's what we do," as if that explained anything at all. But here's the thing. Burial isn't just what we do. It's what something did. A something that changed the entire story of what it means to be human. The real answer for why humans bury their dead isn't found in religion. It isn't found in fear of disease, or practicality, or any of the tidy explanations you've probably heard. It's found in a cave in South Africa, in a discovery that shook the entire field of paleontology, and that most people have never heard of. Let's go back to the beginning. For most of human prehistory, there was no burial. That's the baseline. Bodies were left where they fell, or moved by animals, or scattered by weather. The idea that a dead person deserved a specific, intentional place in the earth, that idea had to be invented. And the question of who invented it turns out to be one of the most startling puzzles in all of science. For a long time, archaeologists assumed that burial was something only modern humans did. Homo sapiens. You and your kind. The story was simple: somewhere between 140,000 and 60,000 years ago, your ancestors crossed some cognitive threshold and started doing things that no creature had ever done before. Art. Symbolic thinking. Ritual. Burial. That story was comfortable. It put humans in a special category. It suggested that something uniquely has had to exist before burial was even possible, something like a concept of death, or an afterlife, or at the very minimum a recognition that the person who died had been a person. Then, in 2013, a team led by paleoanthropologist Lee Berger crawled through a narrow underground passage in the Rising Star Cave system near Johannesburg, South Africa. What they found at the end of that passage overturned decades of assumptions. Hundreds of fossilized bones. Belonging to at least 15 individuals. All the same species. A species that had never been seen before. Berger named it Homo naledi. Homo naledi had a brain roughly the size of an orange, about 1/3 the size of yours. Its hands and feet showed a mix of ancient and modern traits. It walked upright, but not exactly the way you do. Its skull was small. Its cognition, by almost every conventional measure, should have been far below what scientists had assumed was necessary for something like ritual burial. And yet, the bones were deep in a cave that required navigating an underground passage less than 8 inches wide in places. There was no evidence of predators dragging bodies there. There was no evidence of a flood carrying them. There was no evidence of any other explanation except one: Homo naledi was carrying its dead into the cave, intentionally, and leaving them there. Deliberately. The implications were staggering. If Homo naledi, with its small brain, its ancient features, its position far down the human family tree, was practicing something like burial, then the behavior didn't originate with modern humans at all. It predated us. It predated language as we understand it. It predated art. It predated almost everything we thought made us different. Berger put it directly in a 2023 paper: Homo naledi was engraving marks on the walls of those same caves and burying its dead in them. A creature with a brain 1/3 the size of yours was performing what we have always called a deeply human act. Let that land for a moment. The capacity for grief, or something that functioned like grief, didn't arrive with Homo sapiens. It was already there. Waiting. But what exactly was it? That's where the story gets even stranger. Anthropologist Thomas Wynne, who spent decades studying the cognitive origins of ritual behavior, has argued that what we call burial doesn't require language, or symbolic thought, or even a clear concept of death in the way you understand it. What it requires is something simpler and something older: the recognition that a specific individual is gone, combined with a behavioral response to that absence. In other words, grief might be older than thought. Other species show versions of this. Elephants return to the bones of th. Ei dead and touch them with their trunks, standing in silence for long periods. Chimpanzees have been observed carrying the bodies of their deceased infants for days or weeks, refusing to put them down. Corvids, crows and ravens, have been documented gathering around dead members of their group in what researchers have called crow funerals. None of these animals bury their dead. But all of them have something, a response to the specific absence of a specific individual that goes beyond simple biological indifference. Homo naledi appears to have taken that response and done something new with it. Institutionalized it. Given the absence of place. The cave wasn't random. It required effort to reach. It required navigating underground in darkness. It required carrying a body through a passage barely large enough for a living person to squeeze through. Whatever was driving that behavior, it wasn't convenience. It was something closer to intention. And that intention, once it existed, changed everything. Because here's what burial does that simply leaving a body cannot do. Burial creates a location. A place that is now associated with a person who no longer exists. And once you have a place like that, something happens to the group that created it. They return. They remember. The place holds the memory of the individual even after the individual is gone. Archaeologist Colin Renfrew, who has spent decades studying the emergence of symbolic behavior, has argued that the grave is any of the earliest and most powerful forms of symbolic space in human history. Not because of what's in it, not the body, not the objects sometimes buried with it, but because of what it does to the living. It materializes loss. It gives grief a geography. You can visit a grave. You cannot visit a person who is gone. But the grave lets you do something that is almost as powerful. You can go to the place where that person was put, and you can stand there, and the fact that you are standing there means something. It means the person mattered. It means the loss was real. It means the group remembers. This is what Homo naledi may have discovered, or stumbled into, 300,000 years ago or more. That grief, given a location, becomes memory. And memory, shared across a group, becomes identity. Every culture in human history has buried its dead, or burned them, or preserved them, or set them somewhere specific. The form changes. The impulse doesn't. Even when modern people scatter ashes at sea or in a forest, they usually choose a meaningful location, a place the person loved, a place the family knows. The geography of loss is still there. It just takes a different shape. And now you have to sit with a strange thought. The reason you feel something when you stand at a grave, that complicated, wordless feeling, the one that has something to do with love and something to do with time and something to do with the fact that a person who existed in the world no longer do. Yes, that feeling is not modern. It is not uniquely human. It did not arrive with language or religion or civilization. It arrived much earlier. In the dark. In a narrow underground passage. In a creature with a brain a third the size of yours that nonetheless did the one thing that only grief demands, it made sure the gone were not simply forgotten. Paleoanthropologist Lee Berger said something in an interview after the rising star discoveries that has stayed with researchers ever since. He said that what they found in that cave was not just a new species. It was evidence that the emotional architecture of the human mind is older, and stranger, and more widespread than anyone had dared to imagine. You did not invent burial. You inherited it. And the feeling you have at a graveside, the one that words never quite fit, you inherited that too. From something that lived in the dark, and understood, in whatever way it could, that the people it carried into the earth had mattered. That was always the answer. Not religion. Not fear. Not practicality. Something carried its dead into the dark because it could not bear to simply leave them. And somewhere in that act, in that refusal, is the first recognizable trace of everything you have ever called love.